Today, I want to talk about ways that you can practically implement, starting today, that you can start prioritizing for your future family. Gen Z, right now, so often, we are in this child-free movement. And some people that I feel so strongly for, they want children. They're Gen Zers, they're millennials, and they want children, but they don't feel like it's financially plausible for them to do so. And so they have concerns about their finances and how they're going to make that work in our current society. As someone who is 23 years old, I graduated from college less than 2 years ago, got married, and I now have my first little baby on the way. I want to give you some literal practical tips for how you can prioritize family with your everyday choices so that way when the possibility comes for you to be a mother or a father, you can literally just transition seamlessly into motherhood or fatherhood without having to worry about whether you are financially secure enough or whether you've met certain income qualifications. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. I talk about all things living an intentional life, rooted in God's word, talking about motherhood, pregnancy, feminism, wifehood, a lot of items such as that, living off of one income on a small budget. I think there's so many people out there who genuinely want to have children, and they're Gen Z, they're millennial, but the reason that they give for not having children is inflation, student loans, or something related to money. Now, my husband and I have personally struggled through both inflation and student loans, and we are still working towards coming out on the other side, but we absolutely have been able to save money and afford the literal option of having children. I think what's important here to remember is you, number one, have to get your priorities in order. If your priority really is having children and having a child, there's a lot that you can do. There's a lot of reprioritization that can take place. There's a lot of cutting back that can happen. But the thing is, at the root, you have to remember what your goal is. And if your goal is truly to have children and to be involved with family and to prioritize family, you've got to remember that that is your end goal and that everything else is going to be secondary to that. So this is kind of very hard for a lot of people to do because I think for most people, especially for most women, they give lip service to the fact that I want to be a mother and I want to have kids and be able to stay at home, but they don't really want to make the cuts necessary to do that. They want to also give their kids Nike shoes and the brand new clothes and the nice camp and 500 other million things that cost a lot of money rather than focusing on maybe experiences or things that don't cost so much money. So you have to really be willing to make that a priority in your finances. I would say take a good look at your finances right now. If you in the future want to be able to be a parent, and especially if you're a woman and you want to stay home with your children, you really have to start prioritizing that now. And if you are a teenager who is listening, yes, I'm talking to you too. Please start prioritizing that now. And that starts with your financial habits. Your financial habits, your level of frugalness, how much you are spending, that's going to have an impact on the ability you're going to have later on in life because it's those habits that are going to stay with you and they're going to be really hard to break, especially if you have a child and then you have to downsize certain aspects of your lifestyle. It's going to be really difficult for you to try to live within a reasonable budget at that time if you've created habits of spending very excessively. So one thing you got to start cutting out right now is excessive spending. Now, If you're making an okay amount and you want to buy something here or there, like that's great. That's fine. That's fantastic. If you have the money to do so, say you're in a family, you have a husband, he makes maybe a lot of money, and so you guys can afford to live completely off of his income and still spend. And that's fantastic. That's great, actually. You probably don't even need to watch this video if you're in that case. But if you're not in that case, if you're like many of the rest of us who you maybe can afford to live off one income, but you just can't do it right now, or maybe you just don't think that it's possible to extend into the future, I would encourage you to start looking at your actual budget. If this is truly a priority for you, I would encourage you to downsize your lifestyle as much as possible. And here's the deal. Cutting out a $5 Starbucks drink that you might get once a week, it's going to help, but it's not the end all be all. It's not. What's going to make the biggest difference is probably going to be your rent payments. Honestly, for us, we have strived to have very low rent payments everywhere we've lived. And oh, by the way, we've lived in 3 different states in the past 2 years. And in all 3 of those states, we have tried to find the absolute cheapest and yet still safe options for rent. So yes, we've lived in someone's basement. We lived in an apartment in the quote unquote sketchy part of town. Now, it wasn't really that sketchy because the town was a nice town in Wyoming and it really wasn't that bad, but we lived there. We now live in the nice part of West Virginia, but in West Virginia, the nice part of it is still a little bit more sketchy than probably any other state. But my point is, because this was a priority, we moved and went to a cheaper state, West Virginia. Kind of a pretty cheap state, right? Because this was a priority for us. If family's a priority for you, try as best as you can to cut out as much expense that's going towards rent or your mortgage as possible. And if you bought a house with a super big mortgage rate and just did that, I'm glad you have a house. That's fantastic. But if you're not able to afford it and live off one income, and that's truly a goal for you, then I would encourage you to cut back on that house, to maybe go back to renting or go back to something a lot cheaper that you can save that extra money, or pay down enough of the mortgage on the house that you are able to afford it off of one income. The goal here is to live off of one income, even if you have 2. Because if you can do that, if you can live off of one income, even a very small income, my husband had, for most of our marriage so far, like he's not out there making billions of dollars. He's not out there making an above average income or an average income. But we live consistently off of his income, which means we save a little bit of money. We don't save a ton, but we save a little bit of money off of his income. We pay down debt off of his income. All of our living expenses off of his income. And whatever I get to bring in goes right to paying down debt. So we did have a big significant amount of student loan debt starting off our marriage. And we are so close to paying almost all of that off. We've paid probably about, I don't know. We've paid like 5/7 of it. I don't know what the statistical number would that for that would be. What, 50 divided by 7? 50 divided by 7 would be, it's about 70%. That's about 70%, right? 49, that's 1. 10 and 7 is 1. Yeah, that's like 71%. So we've paid off 71% of a large portion of student loans because we've lived off of one income. And we've used the entire second income solely to put towards building our net worth, which means either saving or paying down debt. And once we are at the point at which that debt is totally paid off, which, like I said, 71% there, right? We're so close. But once we're at that point, we are then able to save that entire amount that is going towards debt right now. We're able to put towards savings. And so I will no longer need to have a job. But if I did still keep my job, like my job would only be paying for extra savings. And so we would be able to continue saving for a house, which houses are very expensive. I'm not, conflating that. Inflation is rough. Houses are expensive, but we would be able to still continue putting money towards saving towards a house, putting money towards saving for other things that we might need or things that might come up or our emergency fund, and still live it from month to month, all off of one income and one under average income. I know it can be very difficult to do, but if you can work it that way, and if you're currently single, but you know that you want to prioritize having a family in the future, start now. Start with your habits, your spending habits. You can absolutely prioritize having a family while still living off of one income and saving money and doing it all to be able to have the children that you want. So if you are one of those people who feel that you can't, that it's impossible to have children, I would encourage you truly look at the numbers, cut back on everything that you possibly can if it's a priority to you. If it's not a priority to you, then don't say you can't do it, but because you can, it's just not a priority to you. So maybe share okay, it's not a priority for me to cut back this much. I don't want to do that. That's not the life that I want to live. And be honest with yourself about that. And that's okay. That's a very valid choice. But be honest with yourself, be honest with others. We can't have children because of the economy. We don't want to live the life required to have the children in our current economic situation. And go from there. So I hope this helped you guys out so much and was very practical. Like I said, saving on rent, cutting back literally everything that you possibly can. I'm talking eat chicken and ground beef. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about shoot your own animals if you have to. I'm talking about garden your own produce if you can. We can't right now. We're in an apartment. We can't. But if we were able to, that would be great. If you have family nearby that you can plant a little garden in, do that. If you have any sort of family that gives you food, fantastic, right? But I'm talking about do as much as you can, right? Change the thermometer to 55 degrees in the winter. My husband and I did that. It was very, very cold, but we layered up and we just used an in-space heater at night in our bedroom, and it saved us. It saved us money. It saved us money on both gas and electricity because we use both for our heating. And so it may seem extreme, some of the things that you might have to do, but it's absolutely possible. Now, like I said, you might not want to do those things and live off of one income, and that's okay. That's a very valid position to take. But be honest with yourself. Is this truly what I want? Or is it that I don't want to make the large sacrifice required in order to do it, because it is a sacrifice? Thank you guys so much for listening. Give this a thumbs up if you felt that this was helpful.